Damn, dude. They were blowing each other's backs out, dude. The walls were sweaty by the end of it. 68 hours back to back. Xi Jinping alone in a room. God, I wish it were me. In the 2008 presidential campaign, a 23-year-old fundraising staffer got in the car with Biden. Okay, Senator, time to do some fundraising calls, the aide said. Biden responded by looking at him and snapping, get the fuck out of the car. I love that. That's fire. Are they just trying to sell me on Biden? Because it seems to me like I'm being sold on Biden a little bit. Let's take a look at Fareed Zakaria and a conversation with Joseph Robinette Biden.
Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
When you go to the NATO summit, the big strategic issue is that Ukraine wants membership in NATO. Should it get membership in NATO?
I don't think it's ready for membership in NATO, but here's the deal. I spent, as you know, a great deal of time trying to hold NATO together because I believe Putin has had an overwhelming objective from the time he launched 185,000 troops into Ukraine. And that was to break NATO. He was confident, in my view, and many of the intelligence community, he was confident he could break NATO. So holding NATO together is really critical. I don't think there is unanimity in NATO about whether or not to bring Ukraine into the NATO family now, at this moment, in the middle of a war.
Yeah, that'd be insane. They'd be like, all right, Article 5 time. They're like, that's the entire point of why they haven't done it. Is because they don't want nuclear war. I don't know why. Do people think that it just like went away or something? Like people just keep forgetting that. So then all of a sudden, every 6 months, they're just like, bring this back up. Every 6 months, they're like, hey, by the way, Ukraine should join NATO. Like they're in war right now. Croatia is a role model for Ukraine. Liberate all Ukraine as Croatia did. Oh. How did Croatia liberate all of itself? That's an interesting perspective. What's good, boys? Yeah, it's good to be back. I'm already fucking doing the news and shit. Yeah, I immediately got on fucking awful. Yeah, no, it's really bad. Like right here. Yeah, because Alexa punched me. That's what broke my rib. No, he's just slandering you.
For example, if you did that, then, you know, I mean what I say, we're determined to commit every inch of territory that is NATO territory. It's a commitment that we've all made no matter what. If the war is going on, then we're all in a war. You know, we're at war with Russia if that were the case. So I think we have to lay out a path for the rational path for Ukraine to be able to qualify to get into NATO. And we have, when the very first time I met with Putin 2 years ago in Geneva, and he said, I want commitments on no Ukraine in NATO. I said, we're not going to do that because it's an open door policy. We're not going to shut anybody out. NATO is a process that takes.
It's weird because it seems like you have shut Ukraine out. I wonder why. Like, oh, it's an open door policy, Jack, except for Ukraine because it's currently invaded by Russia. And that would mean nuclear war.
Some time to meet all the qualifications, and from democratization to a whole range of other issues. So in the meantime, though, I've spoken with Zelensky at length about this. And one of the things I indicated is the United States would be ready to provide, while the process was going on, and it's going to take a while that process was going on, to provide security a la the security we provide for Israel, providing the weaponry, the need.
Damn, he said Allah provides security over Israel.
The capacity to defend themselves if there is an agreement, if there is a ceasefire, if there is a peace agreement. And so I think we can work it out, but I think it's premature to call for a vote, you know, in now, because there's other qualifications that need to be met.
Saying Ukraine is similar to Israel is wild, okay? Yeah, we gotta do we gotta do security in Ukraine just like we're doing in Israel. Thank God.
Including democratization and some of those issues.
The short-term issue is at the NATO summit is Sweden. Will Sweden, do you think, are you optimistic that Sweden will be invited to join NATO relatively soon?
I am. I've met recently with the Swedish Prime Minister here. Sweden is has the same value set that we have in NATO, has a small nation, but has the capacity to defend itself, they know how to fight, and I think they should be a member of NATO. You know better than anyone, the holdup is Turkey. Turkey and Sweden.
Erdogan is so funny because he was like, yeah, I won't let you do it until you put a Quran in every single Swedish child's hands. No, I'm just kidding. He didn't say that. But he was like, you know what? I'll allow it if you like give us every Kurdish journalist you have inside your borders. And they were like, no. But then he was like, okay, I'll allow it if you start European Union inclusion talks for Turkey. And they were like, no. So then he literally was just like, all right, whatever, I'll just allow it as of today. So what happened? He also released a bunch of Azov guys back to Ukraine after telling Russia that they were going to stay there for the duration of the war. He's just been cucking Russia over and over again, dude. He's like, after getting support from Russia, after getting Russia to basically build like power plants and shit, after the whole like missile defense system saga, Erdogan has been riding NATO like the horniest little I don't know what kind of comparison I can do. My brain is shutting off a little bit.
Sweden is making adjustments in their law to relate to whether or not have people burning the Quran. Well, they aren't Swedes that are burning the Quran. They are immigrants who are burning the Quran. And that gives an excuse or puts Erdogan in a tough spot at home. And so they're moving to stop that.
He's not wrong, but most people don't use immigrant in that term. No, the main guy is a Danish dude. So he's not wrong. It's so funny. Yeah. The main Nazi that's doing the Quran burnings is a fucking Danish guy. So that's pretty funny that he just like dropped it like that, making it seem like, because when you talk about immigrants in Europe, like you're not talking about fucking Danes or whatever. You're talking about, oh, there was an Iraqi guy too, apparently. Really? But it's funny to bring it up like this, because like they're talking about Muslim immigrants for the most part.
Number one. Number two, Turkey is looking for modernization of F-16 aircraft. And Mitsotakis in Greece is also looking for some help. And so what I'm trying to, quite frankly, put together is a little bit of a consortium here where we're strengthening NATO in terms of the military capacity of both Greece as well as Turkey, and allow Sweden to come in. But it's in play. It's not done.
But you're hopeful.
I'm hopeful. Matter of fact, I'm optimistic.
You have news. The news is that the administration is going to provide cluster munitions to the Ukrainians. These are weapons that 100 nations ban, including some of our closest NATO allies. When there was news that the Russians...
All right, here. Jack, there's minefields here. I'm predicting what he's going to say. There's minefields that Russians put down. They're the ones who are using cluster munitions. We never said we won't use cluster munitions, Jack. And the best way to take over minefields and destroy them is by deploying cluster munitions, Jack. Got to cluster bomb them.
Nations might be using it, admittedly, against civilians. Your then press secretary said this might be to constitute war crimes. What made you change your mind and decide to give them these weapons?
Two things, Fareed, and it was a very difficult decision on my part. And by the way, I discussed this with our allies, discussed this with our friends up on the Hill, and we're in a situation where Ukraine.
Yeah, I discussed it with the guys who were making the weapons, and they were like, we would love to sell you some.
Ukraine continues to be brutally attacked across the board by munitions, by these cluster munitions that have dud rates that are very, very low, I mean, very high, that are dangerous to civilians, number one. Number two, the Ukrainians are running out of ammunition. The ammunition that they call them 155 millimeter weapons. This
part I don't understand. Like, how? Someone who's like a big time Ukraine, NATO, Andy, please explain to me how. Are they like selling half of the weapons that immediately come in through the borders? Like, how is that physically possible? Especially against the sleeping bear that is the Russian forces, who American news media has said consistently since the first day of the invasion was underprepared and had no munitions. Like, how the fuck is Russia and all of the weapons that they have enough to keep eviscerating Ukrainian targets? Meanwhile, Ukraine keeps going through the most amount of fucking, like $150 billion worth of munitions. I don't understand it. Russians have run out of ammo and are using shovels. Source MI5. Yeah, well, that also doesn't make sense. You get that, right? Like, I don't understand how they have... What are they, sitting on the largest stockpile on the planet? This is all fodder, because bottom line, if we whip it out, no doubt Russia going to follow suit this escalation. I mean, what are they going to do? Use cluster munitions? They have been using it since day one. But I don't understand how. How is Ukraine running out of bullets, man? How? How are they running out of ammo? How is that possible? They have the entire Afghan budget and times 2 now, almost. Where are these guns going? That's all I'm asking. It doesn't make sense. Please, someone explain this budget to me, okay? Because it doesn't make sense. What's up, dude? What the fuck is that bag? What the fuck?
This is a war relating to munitions and the running out of that ammunition, and we're low on it. And so what I finally did, took the recommendation of the Defense Department to, not permanently, but to allow for, in this transition period where we get more 155 weapons, these shells for the Ukrainians, to provide them with something that has a very low dud rate. It's about I think it's 150, which is the least likely to be blowing, and it's not used in civilian areas. They're trying to get through those trenches and stop those tanks from rolling. And so, but it was not an easy decision, and we're not signatories to that agreement.
It's not bullets. You know, we don't have a shitload of artillery shells. Okay, I know it's not bullets. It's like when I call a sword a gun. Okay, don't be a semantics pervert. God damn it, every fucking NATO Andy is like this. It's not a gun. Yeah, I know. Shut up. Here's the thing. Okay? What I'm trying to say is this. How is Russia's depleted ass military, whose like frontline is populated by pedophile freaks and sex criminals, and then the rest of the military is just like dudes who are forced to go to war at gunpoint, conscripts? How is that fucking military, with how tiny of a fucking amount of money they have, able to withstand unlimited amounts of American ammo? It's not depleted, bro. When I say Russia's military is depleted, I mean I'm using what the Western media is saying. It makes no sense.
But it took me a while to be convinced to do it. But the main thing is they either have the weapons to stop the Russians now keep them from stopping the Ukrainian offensive through these areas, or they don't. And I think they needed them.
Let me ask you about China policy.
Recently,
there have been announcements of new restrictions on Chinese companies relating to cloud computing. The Chinese are now beginning to put restrictions in place on critical materials relating to semiconductors. When I travel around the world, the sense I get is people are wondering, where is this going? Is this a ratchet where the United States will keep doing things like this, the Chinese will start responding, and this goes on? Or do you think there's a kind of stable point here where US-China relations can be, as you have often said, competitive, but also, when necessary, cooperative?
The answer is, I think there's a stable point. But look, if you don't mind my saying, just before we went on air, we talked about things are changing here in the world. China is in flux right now as well.
Sir, I actually played Call of Duty, and war never changes, sir. Yeah. Right.
China has enormous potential capacity.
Was that Fallout?
Enormous
Fuck.
problems as well. And so there's two things that I have tried to do in terms of our China policy. And by the way, I have met person to person with Xi Jinping more than any other world leader. 68 hours alone, he and I, with an interpreter.
Damn, dude. They were fucking blowing each other's backs out, dude. The walls were sweaty by the end of it. 68 hours, back to back. God, I wish it were me. Xi Jinping alone in a room. My Lord, dude. They were doing tantric shit. They busted open the fucking Kama Sutra book. They hit it from every angle. You know what I mean? Holy Lord.
Vice president all the way through, because as you remember, it was clear he was going to be president, and it wasn't appropriate for the president of the United States, Barack Obama, to be traveling the world with him. But I traveled 17,000 miles with him when he was vice president in China. And so we understand each other, I think, fairly well, number one. Number two, everything's changing. You know, you've heard me say it before, the world's at an inflection point. No matter what was happening, China is at a different place right now. Internally. I'll give you an example. He often says to me, not often, he has on two occasions called me and said, why am I criticizing what's going on in Western China and slave labor, et cetera? And I said, remember you told me that for China to be able to be secure, it needs to have one leader, a united China from Taiwan to the Tibetan Plateau, and that's when China has always done well, going all the way back to the time when we had emperors. And I said, and so for me not to talk about, and you told me for you not to talk about unity of China, you wouldn't be able to lead. I said, well, United States is the most unique nation in the world. We are organized based on
uniquely racist. Fucking got him, dude. Let's go. Back it up, boys. It's over.
Idea, we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women are created equal, etc. We've never lived up to it, but we've never walked away from it. And for me, for American presidents to remain silent on slave labor would be totally inconsistent. And so I think what I'm trying to say is, I'm sorry to go on so long, is that I think there is a way to establish a working relationship with China that benefits them and us. And the last thing I'll tell you on this is, I also called him after he had that meeting with the Russians with about.
Remember the 68 hours we had together? I sure do. The fuck are you doing now, huh? You think Putin can hit it as hard as I can? You think he can throw it back like I can? No. What are you doing? Putin is like fucking 5'3", okay? You saw him ride that horse shirtless and you said, I want some. Me next. We all did. Who amongst us didn't feel that way? Okay? We all did it. But you know, I'm here. I'm reliable. I got age, experience.
About this new relationship, et cetera. And I said, this is not a threat, this is an observation. I said, since Russia went into Ukraine, 600 American corporations have pulled out of Russia. And you've told me that your economy depends on.
Yeah? Is that what's going to happen? Yeah, you're going to pull out of China?
Investment from Europe and the United States. And be careful, be careful. And so
What did he say?
He listened, he didn't argue. And if you notice, he has not gone full bore on Russia. He talks about, you know, nuclear war would be a disaster. There is such a thing as security that's needed anyway. So I think there's a way.
Dude, this is old school politics, being like, I gave a veiled and rather empty threat, and that's why China behaved the way it's been behaving. That's old school politics. Trump literally lies all the fucking time. He's like, Xi Jinping loves me. He thinks I'm fucking sick. He wants me to also murder drug dealers, like he's murdering drug dealers, like all this shit. Meanwhile, Joe Biden's like, oh yeah, I got China to back off from Russia by doing an empty and veiled threat. It's stupid. Just if you're gonna do that, if you're gonna do the anti-China posturing, you got to be xenophobic. Okay, you can't be out here talking about how great of a statesman you are. Okay, companies are massively pulling away from China and moving to other Asian nations like Vietnam. Yeah, I know. The Chinese economy is over, folks. Tomorrow, any moment now. It's also funny to look at Vietnam and be like, and Vietnam, a nation state. I mean, Vietnam hates China, but God, you should, you know, I don't know, maybe look at what the Vietnamese politics are a little bit as well. Good thing you're moving away from one Asian quote unquote ostensibly socialist nation to another one that's certainly not. Vietnamese government doesn't hate China. There's friendly progress. Okay.
We can work through this. And that's why I've spent so much time beefing up. I think if I told you 3 years ago, which I had written about in my notes, that I was going to get Japan deeply involved, have them change their defense budget, have them work with not that I've done it, but them work with South Korea, work something out. We're going to put together the Quad, which is India, Australia, the United States, and Japan. I got a call from on that. He said, why are you doing that? I said, we're not doing that to surround you. We're doing that to maintain stability in the Indian Ocean and in the South China Sea, because we believe the rules of the road about what constitutes international airspace, what constitutes international space in the water, should be maintained. And so I just think it's going to take a little time, and where it goes depends a lot on what he's able to do internally in terms of his economy.
Do you think he wants China to replace the United States as the leading power, the defining power?
Oh yeah, I think he does. I mean, you know, I'm confident he wants to have the largest economy in the world and have the largest military capacity in the world.
Rewrite the rules of the international order?
I think so. Not all of them, but he pointed out to me, he said, we weren't there when those rules were written about international airspace and so on. But I don't think he's looking for war, conflict, expansion of territory. And
based Dengist, Joseph Dengist Biden. They don't want international conflict. They don't want territorial expansion. Dude, all the fucking NATO Andes all the anti-China Redditors are going to fucking lose their minds when they hear this. They're going to get so mad.
I sometimes say to my colleagues, I've spent over 180 hours talking with my NATO colleagues and European colleagues in person or on Zoom, I say to them, do you know anybody, any world leader who would trade places with Xi Jinping? Okay, I'll trade. I'll take their problems, you take mine. I don't know anybody who would. Because it's not that he's a bad guy or a good guy. The circumstances are enormously complicated. For example, you know, the whole notion of, you know, this new ring road that's going to put around, you're going to invest in other nations. Well, it's ended up producing dead in a noose, you know, these countries.
Artillery ammo is short because the past 50 years, the U.S. doctrine went under the assumption that volume of artillery fire wouldn't be important because it also assumed air superiority. Russia is drawing from old Soviet stocks that were orders of magnitude larger than NATO's. Isn't Fox going to have a field day with his Biden defense China? I mean, I don't even hate the way he's speaking about this. Because he's not like entirely incorrect in the way that he's speaking about, like, obviously China's interest in the global economy, where they want to be, where they're going towards, and what their interests are, especially because he's like, weirdly enough, this is a very sober assessment of China's interests. And he hasn't turned around and been like, Xi Jinping is a dictator, Jack. He wants to fuck and suck every single person around the world, Jack. Like, it's normally whenever someone talks about China, they either glaze up China, not myself, obviously, or they just ride China so fucking hard, like China is the worst country on the planet. Every Chinese person is technically there to, you know, a double agent that wants to kill you, that sort of shit.
Are in real life. Ring road that's going to put around, you're going to invest in other nations.
The ring road.
It's ended up producing dead in a noose. You know, these countries are in real trouble. And so, but it requires us to be more responsible. The West, I've been pushing very hard to get our European colleagues to invest in infrastructure in Africa, in South America, to generate the kind of growth that they should have and could have, because we're the ones that caused.
He's saying it's turned into a news because of debt relief, like because China is engaging in like loans not coming to fruition and then just offering debt relief. That's why he's saying it's like, it doesn't make sense, Jack. Why are they not implementing austerity measures as they control the entire country? It's not how this works.
The environmental problems, we clear cut everything. And now we're telling them, no, everybody slow up. But I guess what I'm saying is, I think there are positive answers to the dilemmas that exist without worrying about whether or not China is going to rule the world.
What will it take for Bibi Netanyahu to get an invitation to the White House?
Well, first.
Damn, Fareed, why are you asking it like that? He's asking like he's like, Bibi's been hitting me up. President Biden, he's very disappointed that you have not extended an invitation to him.
First of all,
was there any mention of Taiwan during that? No. He believes his debt relief with respect to China, then how are we supposed to believe that he was ever good faith about getting rid of student debt? What? Dude, that's two entirely separate things, okay? I can't believe you turned Joe Biden's foreign policy and his assessment on like Chinese One Belt, One Road initiatives and all the loans that they have recognized will not be paid off and engage in debt relief to Joe Biden's own personal capabilities. They did mention China being ruled by a single person from Taiwan to the West. Yeah, but he didn't talk about it in negative terms. He just said Xi Jinping believes that China needs to be ruled by one person all the way from Taiwan to the West, which is true. That is what Xi Jinping's take is. That's not a secret.
Israeli president is going to be coming. We have other contacts. I've been, as I think it's fair to say, an unyielding supporter of Israel for over, I've only been around a couple of years, but for as long as I've been around. And Bibi, I think, is trying to work through how we can work through his existing problems in terms of his coalition.
What?
He has.
Joe Biden's so old. He gave he was the one who fucking drew the Palestinian maps, dude. Motherfucker. I've been around for a couple years, Jack. I don't know if he's like joking or not. I don't understand what he's trying to say there.
I'm one of those who believes that Israel's ultimate security rests in a two-state solution. I think it's a mistake to think that as some members of his cabinet, and this is one of the most extreme members of cabinets that I've seen. I go all the way back to Golda Meir and all, you know, and not that she was extreme, but I go back to that era. I think that the fact that the Palestinian Authority has lost its credibility, not necessarily because
Yeah, I wonder why. Wait, oh, what? Oh, come on. The Palestinian Authority hasn't lost its credibility because of what Israel's doing?
just because it's just lost its credibility.
Yeah, just on its own. How did that happen? How did the Palestinian wait, how did that happen? How did they lose their credibility, I wonder? He's like, just because it lost its credibility. You know, I love American leaders and their foreign policy perspectives, because it's like, it goes back to like, they hate us because they ain't us type shit. You know what I mean? It's like, why did Osama bin Laden strike the towers? How did that happen? What were the reasons? Because they hate us. You know, why did the Iraqi citizens, take up arms against American invading forces? Oh, because they hate us, because they hate our freedoms. Why did the Palestinian Authority lose its influence over the Palestinian population? It just kind of happened on its own. Not because of what Israel has done, and not because of like the Palestinian Authority being seen as like a Palestinian face to the Israeli occupational forces violence.
The fact that the Palestinian Authority has lost its credibility, not necessarily because of what Israel's done, just because it's just lost its credibility.
It absolutely is because of what Israel has done and what the Palestinian Authority has done on top of that. The reason why Palestinians do not like the Palestinian Authority is because they see it as a branch of the Israeli government at this point.
Number one. And number two, created a vacuum for extremism among the Palestinians. The PLA, there's some very extreme elements.
Yeah, how did that happen? Another question. It's like, how did that happen? Oh, they're just extreme like that. They're just radical, dude. They're like, yeah, that's right. Again, this kind of radicalism, or even like fundamentalist sects growing in size and popularity, can only happen because of what Israel is doing. Their endless conquest, their endless bloodshed has forced these people into a corner. That's it. It is so profoundly stupid. Now, of course, I do believe that Biden and every other foreign policy person understands that. I think they understood it in Afghanistan. I think they understood it in Iraq. I think they understood it in Israel as well. They're just paid to not understand it. They're paid to say the exact opposite of what the reason is.
So it's not all Israel now in the West Bank, all Israel's problem, but they are part of the problem.
That's insane. Off topic, but a part Spanish Twitch community is losing their mind over you because some Twitch streamers saw you at TwitchCon and say you're the hottest guy on the platform. Bien hecho, really? Oh, I wish we hung out. I didn't get to hang out with a lot of Spanish streamers at all this time.
And particularly those individuals in the cabinet who say they have no right to, we can settle anywhere we want, they have no right to be here, etc. And I think we're talking with them regularly, trying to tamp down what's going on, and hopefully Bibi will continue to move toward moderation and changing the court.
You've had tough words about Saudi Arabia from the start about the Khashoggi killing and things like that. You talked about needing a kind of new relationship. They've been pretty unyielding when you've asked them to pump more oil. They slashed oil recently. Now Saudi Arabia wants a defense treaty from the United States, promising that you will protect them, and they want civilian nuclear capacity, which again, the US would have to provide. And in return, they would recognize Israel. Are you going to do it?
We're a long way from there. We got a lot to talk about. For example, that trip I went, which was criticized for my going, a number of things have happened on that trip. On that trip, I was able to negotiate overflights of Israeli aircraft can now overfly Saudi Arabia, number one.
That's weird. That's crazy. I can't believe two of our most important allies are aligned with one another. Wow. Shocking.
Number two, the price of oil is actually down, not up. And it's not because they have done one thing or the other, but the world's changing. Our policies relative to renewables are real. Number three, we found ourselves in a circumstance where the war in Yemen is essentially for a year now it's ended. The peace is being kept. So we're making progress in the region, and it depends upon the conduct and what is asked of us for them to recognize Israel. Quite frankly,
You're a deeply unserious person if you look to what's going on in Palestine and go, the real issue is our other allies in the region, like the Gulf states, not fully recognizing Israel. I'm sorry, that is objectively identical to what the Trump administration said. That is objectively identical to what the Trump administration did. That is what Jared Kushner did. You might as well still have Jared Kushner in office, okay? In a position of power. It is mind-boggling to me that a Democratic, supposedly quote-unquote progressive president can go on television and say the identical things that Trump said and do the identical things that Trump did. It's wild how quickly things can change as far as the ratchet effect goes. Okay? Because when Jared Kushner was doing the shit that he was doing in Israel, all the liberals were united in dunking on him. Obviously, that was bullshit at the end of the day. They didn't give a fuck. But moving the embassy to Jerusalem and a recognition of the reason why Israel feels so comfortable doing additional violence in the West Bank now is because of the Trump administration's actions. At the time, the Biden administration, or not the Biden administration, but the Democrats were like, oh, this is kind of not the best thing to do, I think. Please, let's not do that. Meanwhile, he's just, building on top of that same policy and reinforcing it. It's just so stupid.
I don't think they have much of a problem with Israel, quite frankly. And whether or not we would provide a means by which they could have civilian nuclear power and or be a guarantor of their security, I think that's a little way off.
Finally, Mr. President, you've often said when people ask you about your age, just watch me. And I think a lot of people do watch you and are impressed, and they think you've been a great president. You've brought the economy back. You've restored relations with the world. But many of these people do say, and these are ardent supporters of yours, the next thing he should do is step aside and let another generation of Democrats take the baton. Why are they wrong?
Well, not right or wrong. Look, to use the phrase again, I think we're at an inflection point. I think the world is changing, and I think there is one thing.
He said,
It comes with age if you've been honest about it your whole life, and that is some wisdom. I think we're on the cusp of being able to make significant positive changes in the world. Really, honest to God, do.
Dude, any moment now, I'm just going to go back on the things that I was not capable of doing, even though I did have the capacity to do so, just didn't have the enthusiasm, and I'm going to do them. Any minute now, guys, just you wait, okay? It's coming. It's coming. I've already impressed so many people. I'm going to impress even more people, okay?
You see what we've done in Europe.
Meanwhile, the only thing that it has been true is not necessarily Biden's campaign promises when he was out and speaking to the public. The only promise that he made that came true was at the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break. Here's the 3-minute ad break now. Okay, the only promise that he made that he actually fulfilled wasn't the top of the hour ad break. That's my promise, and I've been fulfilling it. The only promise he made that he fulfilled was that nothing will fundamentally change. Remember when Biden said that? Not in a open door meeting, not to, I don't know, union members or anything like that, but to Wall Street financiers. Because that was the real campaign promise, because that was, in that closed door meeting that he had, those were his real constituents who he cares about. David Hellman, thank you for the 5 gifted subs, allowing 5 people to no longer see the ads at the top of the hour. Yo, why is your camera exposure so blown out? It's because your mom's back is blown out by me and my penis. I'm having sexual intercourse with your mom, okay? Some of you need to stop worrying about my camera exposure being so blown out and worry about your mother's backs being blown out by me, okay? Shut the fuck up. I'm not going to sit here and try to fix it right now. I literally got off of a goddamn fucking plane, 10-hour plane ride, and immediately got in a fucking Uber to my house and sat the fuck down and have been streaming. There are going to be some issues, okay? I'm sorry that it's not 100% literally fucking perfect. Everything that you see on camera, I can see as well. Bahaha, so your job, no sexist on law, get a new comeback, bro. Okay. Yeah, if you want to worry about my comeback, ask your mom. Okay? Ask your mom. She has all my cum. You can get it back from her. Oh, fuck. Oh, my God. My rib hurts.
Europe's more united
My ribs are blown up. Harder than your mom's back.
than it's ever been since World War II, into World War II. You see what we've been able to do in the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea. We've united that part of the world, including the basically 50 island nations that are participating. They're going to be here, by the way, shortly. I think we're putting the world together in a way that is going to make things significantly, how can I say it, more secure for people. We're uniting democracies, have the possibility of uniting democracies in a way that hadn't happened ever. And so I think that whether it's the Far East, whether it's NATO, whether it's Europe, whether it's what's going on in Africa, I think we have enormous opportunities. And I think I just want to finish the job. And I think we can do that in the next 6 years.
Mr. President, it's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks.